Do you remember growing your first $900 tomato and thinking, gosh, if I just had gone to the grocery store, it would have been way cheaper? Yeah, same. But we are not doing that anymore. Welcome to the Food, Farm, and Finance Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Graff, and together we are going to build our farms, homesteads, and gardens without destroying our finances. So let's get that bag of soil and money.
Welcome to another episode of the Food, Farm, and Finance Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Graff, and today we are talking about gardening and how it could be the ultimate investment. I'm talking like 401k kind of investment, right? Like this stuff is good. I'm so excited for this episode. As I was running some numbers, I was shocked. I was not expecting this, and I can't wait to hop into the numbers with you guys. But first, a little bit of a message from our sponsors. And the sponsor is me, of course, because this podcast is still a little too lame to get a real fancy bougie sponsor. That's okay. We're working on it. So when we do have a fancy bougie sponsor, we would love if you would support that sponsor, because that is how we are going to keep these episodes free and accessible for everyone, so everyone can build up their gardens, farms, finances, all the jazz. So let's get back to the episode. All right, so gardening might just be the ultimate investment, particularly for people who are struggling with capital, right? So I'm going to say a very hot take, and y'all might riot and revolt, and you may never stream my podcast ever again. Or maybe that's not why you're doing it, because of this controversial statement that I'm about to say, but maybe this podcast is not amazing. That's okay. I accept that. But provide me feedback. So anyone can get rich. How dare you say that, Austin? No. Hold. As someone who did not grow up rich, and as someone who is maybe working to that goal of wealth, I believe anyone can get rich. And the reason I believe this is because I think it's a really basic, simple principle that builds a lot of people's wealth. They need capital to invest in ventures that make their money work for them. So, for example, the S&P 500 has historically yielded 10% a year. Meaning if you have $1 million in the S&P 500, granted, you have to have those $1 million first, right? But if you have that, you're earning $100,000 a year without lifting a ye old finger, right? So once you have money, it's pretty easy to keep money, right? It's just, how do you get that first million? How do you get that first bolstering of capital, right? So I just want to point this out. People are going to talk about inflation, $100,000 a year not being enough, etc. But if you do a standard market withdrawal rate of just 4%, that $1 million can turn into $40K a year, basically, without touching the principal and hopefully accounting for some inflation. While I don't think you're just like out here going to maybe live this luxe life on $40K, and if you have $1 million in the bank, that might be hard to swallow anyways. But I do want to bring up that I think it's possible. The second million is way easier to make than the first million. And this is coming from someone who has 0 millions. So I'm just maybe a wishful thinker at this point. But the whole principle is you need capital to put towards making more money, right? So that means you need margin. You need space in your personal life to invest in, whether that's investing in a business, investing in yourself and your education, whether that's investing in, the stock market. What you're looking for is margin. And I think gardening can help provide that margin. And I've got some numbers that might just support those statements. I'm really excited about this. Can you tell? I'm freaking out. I'm so excited. As of March 2024, the USDA recommends a family of 4 on a thrifty budget. Thrifty, people. We are talking Aldi kind of budget. Actually, this seems a little high for Aldi, but thrifty people, they spend on average $976 a month for groceries. If you have a little bit more liberal budget and you're wanting to add a steak occasionally, you're looking at $1,585 a month. This is staggering. This is actually insane. Basically, you're looking at anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500, $1,600 a month on groceries to feed 4 people. This is absurd to me. And I really felt like this was off. And then I started looking deeper, and it looks like that budget has risen by 27% since 2020. This is the whole grocery inflation thing that we're all feeling, we're all seeing. And every time we go to the store, it's just like, wow, I got 2 bags of groceries for the same thing I've historically bought my entire cart worth of groceries for. And it's getting rough out here, guys. So that is rapidly one of our biggest expenses annually. And this is why I think gardening is the best form of investment right now. Because gardening is great for people who have a little bit more time and no extra capital and no extra margin, right? So if you already have $100,000, maybe you can invest in real estate, maybe you can invest in a business. But if you're like an average human being like myself, you just don't have 100 grand just chilling out there, laying around, blowing in the breeze that you're like, maybe I can just throw this at a rental property. That's just not how it works for most of us. So this, I think, is a great way to start kind of building that margin, because the average household is spending anywhere from $11,000 to $19,000 a year on food. If you're living on a $30,000 salary, or I'm pretty sure the mean household income, and I would have to look that back up. And it's actually sad that I didn't, but I think it's like in the 60s, right? That like middle range household income is like 60,000, maybe up to 70,000 now. But the point is, if you look at $11,000 to $20,000 of that coming out just for food, not talking about housing, not talking about transportation, not talking about insurance, not talking about those Halloween outfits that you have to buy your kid because they don't want to feel left out and you just weren't born crafty, so you don't know how to knit stuff. That's a lot of money, okay? That's a ton of money. But I decided to run the numbers. What if a garden could cut that by half? What if that garden could take that budget from that $11,000 and $19,000 and bring it down to $5,500 a year, $9,500 a year? Because if you could do that, then hypothetically, you could have margin to start investing and building your own dreams with the rest of that grocery budget. Now, that might not be always true for people, right? Because you might just be getting by with that budget, and that margin that it opens up by starting a garden might be what you need to pay off other debt. You might not be ready for investing. Might be what you've just been needing to just even breathe and occasionally do something for yourself. So this obviously doesn't apply to every situation, but I think it's a huge step up potentially for people. Because if you can take that $1,500 or that $9,500 and you invest it over the course of 30 years at that annual yield of 10% matching the S&P 500, you end up with $944,000 all the way up to $1.6 million, depending on where you fall with that grocery budget. That is absurd, meaning you could become a millionaire just by starting a garden. Literally, that's all it takes. And I know this because gardening is just like investing. Think about it. If you do it smartly, so let's not go out there and buy $500 worth of seeds and plant just 10 of those and then get 2 zucchinis, okay? That's not what we're doing. We're planting what we actually intend to eat only, and we are sowing seeds. These seeds can sometimes cost pennies per seed. So, for example, a tomato seed, very economical, cost a couple cents, maybe 15 cents, maybe 20 cents. You plant it, and you could easily grow $20 worth of tomatoes with a little bit of work and a little bit of patience from that one plant, right? So you're taking something from 20 cents to $20. Do you realize the multiple on that? Do you realize the increase that is? Because I don't think a lot of people think about that. We're putting a lot of work into the gardening, so it's not entirely passive, but there's not too many things that you can invest in at 20 cents and within 6 to 7 months end up at $20. So I really want you to think about that. And that's not true of every single variety, but we do see this a lot in terms of the garden, okay? We're planting pennies and we're getting buckets of produce, buckets of food. So that 20 cents to $20 for that tomato plant is a 9,900% increase in value. 9,900% increase in value. So if you do things smart, the state of Tennessee says you can really scrappy put together a garden if you have a piece of earth. And you can maybe spend about $200 on amendments, on basic garden tools, and basic garden seeds. I even challenge that because if you really want to, there are so many ways to start a garden for free. And I am about to launch an episode on really budget intensive gardening tactics. So here's a few spoilers: seed exchanges from libraries, okay? And then consider, online nonprofits for the seeds. You can literally get your seeds from zero. Imagine getting a loan at a 0% interest rate. You never have to pay it back. So it's really not a loan. But imagine they just gave you money to put into the stock market. $0 did it cost you. And then you got a 9,900% increase on your investment of $0. Meaning, this is what we can see in a garden. Plant your seeds out. This historically is how lots of people have survived. This is how you can make sure that those food inflation prices are not eating your wallet. Now, I know you might be like, well, gardening takes a ton of time. I don't have time for gardening. Well, I have broken down a lot of facts about how much time people spend watching TV, which, guess what, makes you $0. And it's startling. People are watching TV for like 4 hours plus a day. No, go outside, get some exercise, plant a corn. Good gosh, plant one corn. That's all you have to do. I will be happy and you will see it multiply. Actually, don't plant corn. Corn needs to be planted in a block for ideal pollination. So one corn plant is just not recommended. But I digress. The point is, if you really want to see your money grow, I think gardening is a great way. Now, 50% offset of your groceries is a little bit intense, right? But I found some studies suggesting that, anywhere from 30 to 50% of produce specifically was at one point in US history predominantly produced by the household and not by the grocery store. So I think that's really fascinating, especially in rural areas, right? Because we have now this shift to where it's like we might, produce like 1% or 2% of our produce. And I think that really hurts us in the sense that we're seeing these food prices skyrocket and we don't have a built-in safety net to catch us. If we had a garden, guess what? That cost of those tomatoes at the store wouldn't hurt so bad. Instead, we'd be like sharing tomatoes with all of our families and friends because we have those and we want to make sure that we can take care of everybody. Be like, oh my gosh, wow, amazing, a tomato. I love tomatoes. And they would be so appreciative because they're so expensive right now. So anyway, I am really backsliding on this whole episode. But what I want you to realize is everything about making money is creating that margin to actually make money. So if you are strapped in debt, if you're drowning in debt from student loans, car payments, mortgage, you don't have any margin. You're just treading. You're just treading water for what you have. And the whole goal is to not just tread water. The goal is to get some margin and start putting those dollars to work. I like to think of each little dollar as a little soldier. So they like go out there, and they're on a mission for me. And that mission is making me some money, okay? And is it working for me right now? To be determined. I'll let you know in 10 to 30 years. It's a slow process, right? But it's all about having that margin to do it. And I think gardening is the way because we spend so much on our food, it's obscene. And the numbers don't lie. Literally, if you can get to a point where you, on a very tight budget, are gardening and offsetting about 50% of your food, even if it's 20%, you could still easily have $500,000 all the way to $1.6 million just because you chose to spend some of your spare time in the garden, okay? Not to mention all the additional benefits you get because there are loads of mental health benefits. And mental health care costs it's so much in this country. It's so expensive. So you can potentially cut down on some of those costs as well. You're not just cutting down on your grocery bill, you're cutting down on those costs. You could be cutting down on your gym costs. You can be cutting down on your healthcare costs because you're eating more produce, more vegetables. And all of those things are creating margin to make you a millionaire gardener. I mean, it's just that simple. I read a study that was talking about how the average farming household still earns about 10 grand more than the average farm or the average household that doesn't farm. So what that tells me, and people think farmers are all poor and blah, 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 blah. But what that tells me is that farming and gardening is switching kind of the lifestyle process. So we all go to work right now and we work our jobs and we come home and we consume food and we consume television and we buy things on Amazon because it feels good. And I do this too. I love a one-day shipping situation. And I would just like everyone to know I spent an entire year of my life not shopping on Amazon. And wow, that was the best year of my life. And I achieved so many financial goals. I have since stopped doing that because I'm like, wow, convenience is so nice. But anyway, I digress. So we are consuming. We're a consumer culture. And the farming gardening culture actually has a little shift. Yes, they're consuming, but they're also producing. So they're producing food, which is producing value, and they're producing actual commodities, right? So food is a commodity. If you have beef cattle, those are a commodity. So you're switching from that consumption mentality, only consumption, to a production manufacturing mentality. And what that means for you, even if you don't always immediately see the returns, is suddenly your home, you as an individual, have things and you're contributing to things. You're not just consuming things. And that alone is going to build a lot of margin into your life, whether it's by offsetting groceries or whether you have that excess that you can maybe sell some to some friends, some family. It's a entire shift. And I'm not saying that there aren't other ways of doing this, right? Like you could go out, you could DoorDash in the evenings, you can get a side hustle to get that margin. But I don't think that many of those little side hustles have all the health benefits, all the emotional benefits, and frankly, just are as fun. Like gardening can be so much fun if you just give it a chance. And I think you're also having all these environmental benefits, right? Because we're reducing our plastic consumption. If we're doing this smart, we are helping, feed pollinators. We are really creating a better world, in my opinion, while literally getting rich off of this. So I don't know. I would love to know what y'all think. Do you think it's possible to become a millionaire gardening? Now, I'm not saying you can just do it just like that, right? You go out, you grow a squash, and you're like, I'm going to be a millionaire. No, there's a lot more to it than that. And I know there's going to be a lot of hot takes on, I could be spending my time doing other things that are way more valuable to me than gardening. But I kind of think that there's a lot of data suggesting that just gardening to support some of your food intake could make you a millionaire. And I think it's the ultimate hack. It's a true form of passive income. Gardening's not passive at all, but you set out your seeds, you do the thing, you maintain them, and they grow, and they put in a lot of work. The plants put in a lot of work. So while it's not completely passive, the fact is you're getting major returns on investment. So I love it. I love the idea of gardening for a profit. I love it, the idea of gardening to offset in your life to create margin. And I just love to hear what you think. So definitely follow along, like, subscribe, all this stuff. Leave us a comment if you can and tell us all about it. Let me know what you think about can you become a millionaire as a gardener, because I am standing by it. I think it's the ultimate way. I'm doing it in my own life. And, we're not there yet, but I'm going to keep you updated. We're getting close. We're about, maybe halfway there. So one day soon. All right. Until next time, I'll see y'all in the next episode.